be talking about solar and talking about solar panel co-ops. And our presenter tonight is Mryia Williams, who is the Ohio Program Associate for Solar United Neighbors. She started with SUN by advocating for the solar rights of those living in a homeowners association. She has personal experience with the Solar United Neighbors co-op process, as she and her husband went solar on their own home back in the Columbus 2020 co-op. And Mryia also enjoys sharing her knowledge about electric vehicles and how they can partner with solar installations. So if you're curious about that, ask it during the Q&A or see her after. I'm also going to give a big shout out to Elizabeth Ellman, who is the Sustainability Programs Coordinator for the City of Bexley. She organized a wonderful slate of programs this month for Sustainable September. There's the schedule back on the back wall as well. So if you're curious about what else is coming up this month, please check that out. But I will turn the mic over to her and she will share some more information. Thank you.
Yeah. Not one to resist an opportunity to plug my own programs. On Sunday, we are beginning our Food Waste Reduction Week of Sustainable September. We're starting with a screening of the film Wasted. It will be shown at Mies Hall at Capital University and it is free to attend. It's at 2 p.m. And all of the information is available at greenbexley.org/sustainable September. We are so glad you are here for our final program about the solar week. I hope that you enjoy this presentation from Mryia and get yourself some panels. We're looking forward to you helping us make Bexley green. Thank you so much.
So as Zach said, I'm Mryia Williams and I'm with Solar United Neighbors. So I'm looking forward tonight to talking to you about our Columbus area co-op. It's open to all of Franklin County and then any of the counties that touch Franklin County. So even if you're not from Bexley, you're welcome here and we can help you to go solar as well. So one of the pictures up here is from our launch, which was in Linden. And we had, several people there, including the Empowered program, which is part of Impact. And they are currently learning how to become solar installers through a grant program provided by the city so that we can, have some locally trained folks for those kind of positions. And Mayor Ben Kessler was one of our guys that came over and helped to do the co-op launch along with council member Remy from Columbus. So we had a good mix of representation from both our suburbs and, the city proper. So for those folks that are joining us online, if you can keep your microphone muted throughout the program, that lets everybody be able to hear a little bit easier. You can drop your questions into the chat section. And this webinar is being recorded. So if you didn't get a chance to watch it all live, you can catch it later. And Zach will be putting that link up onto the library's website. So it'll be available for people, or if you just want to see my smiling face again, you can watch it online at home. So thank you to our partners. So Sustainable Columbus, MORPC, Impact Community Action, Simply Living, Green Energy Ohio, the Ohio Environmental Council, Power a Clean Future Ohio, and Drive Electric Columbus. So who is Solar United Neighbors? So we are a vendor neutral nonprofit. We're based out of DC. We currently operate in 12 states along with Puerto Rico and DC. We just launched our Puerto Rico program last month. So it's still coming online. But we have field staff in those areas, along with some people that usually, they're called my GSP. So they're my Go Solar Pros. Usually they're my Zach, but tonight we get Zach who's going to get to play those same roles for me and run things in the background. So not only do we help people go solar on their rooftops, but we also work in policy. So as he mentioned last year, I was on the policy team. I focused solely on Senate Bill 61, which became effective yesterday because it was signed into law over the course of the summer. So yes, always happy to get a bill through that helps with not only solar access, but it helped to fix up and remove some very antiquated laws that still allowed for housing discrimination to happen within condo associations and HOAs, which we didn't like to see at all. It also helped to fix up some rules that they didn't have in place to help protect funds. So if you're in an HOA or a condo association, now your money has to be insured through a fiduciary firm. So whenever you're paying in those dues, that will be protected so that you don't have somebody just disappearing with it and your HOA not having the funds that they expect to have available. But we focus solely on the solar access portions of it, which, have been nice to see go through. And now we're turning our focus to House Bill 450, which is for community solar, so that we can help those brownfields and housing complexes that can't get solar for different reasons, apartment complexes, to be able to access solar that they can share together. So how did Sun get started? Back in 2007, Walter, who's pictured here on the left, he's the son of our executive director, Anya Schoolman, and he watched An Inconvenient Truth at school. And he came home and he said, "Mom, we need to go solar." And she was like, "Okay, that sounds doable." And then she started into the process and she found that it was complicated and there were lots of words and terms that she didn't know and she didn't understand, and it was way more expensive than she thought it would be. And she decided if they were going to do solar, that she was going to help all of her neighbors go solar as well. And over the course of the next 2 years, around about 50 homes went solar in their area. And it just helped out everybody because they could pool together to have, a similar conversation with people, to help each other understand the different parts of it, and to, get a better rate. Because whenever you're going to a solar installer with just you, they're going to give you the rate that it's just buying that single thing. But whenever we take them 50 or 100 people that want to go solar together, they usually give us a discounted rate, 10-15% on average. So our national impact is that to date, we've helped a little over 6,500 families go solar. We had 340 plus solar co-ops that did that, with 65 megawatts full of solar installed. And we're saving about 739,000 tons of CO2. And then here in Ohio, our program kicked off in 2015. We've helped 518 households go solar with 3.1 megawatts of installed capacity, $11.9 million invested in local solar, $12 million in energy savings is what we estimate that people will have over the next 25 years. And that's at the prices that they were installed at, not anytime you go through those price increases that you have on your power bills. 61 solar jobs have been created because with that many more installations, that many more people had to be hired by those companies. And 50.8 million pounds of carbon emissions have been avoided here in Ohio. So we have a little bit of a theory of change that we work off of. So communities of color, communities of opportunity bear an unfair share of the cost of energy production, not just financially, but environmentally, because those facilities are often placed right in their backyards. So they don't receive any additional benefits to that happening besides that impact to their communities. And they're disproportionately harmed by power shutoffs. So families have the barriers of home ownership because of redlining and different types of policies that are still in place. And racially diverse neighborhoods often can't focus on solar because they're just living constantly in crisis mode. And we want to help change that. It started at the very beginning with us as a company, because whenever Anya, our CEO, started that first co-op, DC was being gentrified and people were being forced out of their homes in some cases by those high bills. So having solar access on their own rooftops helped them to be able to pay those bills easier and stay in their homes. And then here we are doing that in part by working with Impact Community Action on those jobs that I mentioned. We just had one of the solar teams of students got to go out and see installations. They got to work with our installer for a day and see ground mount installations, which you can see in the bottom. And then the bigger picture is of a roof mount installation that they got to go visit. And he also had them getting hands-on with the equipment, and they're working through their certification process, and they're expected to graduate. The first group will graduate next week. And then we expect the second group to graduate, I think it's early October. So we're getting them through these programs so that they can be the future solar installers for our local co-ops. So what are we going to cover today? So it's kind of in three parts. So first up, we're going to cover some solar technology. I'm not going to use any too big of crazy words. This is all stuff that I learned going through a co-op myself. My husband's the electrical engineer, so I usually am like going to have to direct those tech questions back home or to one of my colleagues. So we're going to stay very ground level for this, but then we'll cover some solar economics. And then last, we'll talk about how solar co-ops work to bring those better prices to everybody. And with that, we're going to jump on into solar technology. So how do photovoltaic solar panels work? So first of all, we've got those solar panels that we all recognize. This is a ground mount system. And they work whenever the sunlight hits the panel and converts it into energy, which is our electricity. So each of those panels is made up of 60 to 72 cells, which are laminated between different materials. So you've got those solar cells, and then there's usually some sort of backing material, typically aluminum, to help keep down weight and make them very durable. And then there's glass on top. So those materials are all very recyclable. And they do have recycling processes for solar panels whenever they do reach end of life. You will see these up on the rooftops. There's a little sample in back of the room if you want to feel what the materials feel like, but the ones on your rooftop typically measure about 3 feet by 5 feet, size of a standard American flag. Those panels are made to last for about 20 to 25 years. That's what the warranty on them is nowadays. So they're fully expecting you to keep having the same type of energy production from day 1 to the year 20. So there are different parts to the systems whenever they're installing. So here you can see some solar racking going in, and these are mounts that are made for the shingle roofs, like your standard asphalt shingle, which is what probably 90% or better of the roofs are that we do through co-ops. They do have the capability of working on other materials. So if you have a slate roof, the installer that was selected for Columbus, Ohio Power Solutions, they do have the ability to work on slate roofs. So we have 2 people in the co-op that have slate roofs, and if they do choose to go solar, they've got the company lined up for it. And then some of the other racking solutions, here you can see one that is on a flatter type roof. And this is like a rubber membrane roof. Usually you'll see these on businesses. So those ones have a different type of racking. They look more like a little clamp system so that they don't have to penetrate the roof the same way. And then there are also ballasted systems, which is what we see on a lot of the city buildings. A lot of times have these because they have a very flat rooftop and they're built to take a little bit more weight. Sometimes they'll have living rooftops, and other times, we can help them to install the solar systems that are ballasted. And then if you do have a lot of yard space, if you happen to live just a little bit outside of town, ground mount systems might be something that you opt in for. And then a common piece of equipment that you'll see running through any of these, if you were to look at the back of them, is the wiring, which they'll put in a type of conduit, either plastic or metal, depending on how they're running it, to protect it from critters and all the outside elements, because we don't want your wires to get chewed on or have any type of breakage. So outside of the panels and the wiring, there are some different types of system components. So there are string inverters, which are most commonly used on those ground mount systems. There are a very poor picture. I will have to look for one that has a little less white saturation, but string inverters with DC optimizers, those are for your panels whenever you're going to be running a lot of them into your basement. That's the type of system I have at my house. So all of my panels run into just 2 boxes. And then there's also micro inverters, which work better if you've got some shading or stuff going on with your roof, so that each individual panel can be adjusted more individually. But all of these systems can be covered by the same installers, and they will look at what you need for your roof to make it work in the most optimal manner. And then they will help you decide which type of system would be best for you. So you may end up with any of those 3 types, depending on, what your needs are for your home. So some of the other system components, this one you've already got in your house, that's your electric panel. If your panel is really super full, if you've already got a lot of things going on, you may have to get a new panel or a bigger panel installed. If you have a very old home, probably from like the 50s or earlier, you may have a very small panel. So if you only have like 100 amp or even 75 amp service to your house, you may not have enough room to be able to gain that power back in from the system, and they would have to get you a bigger panel. Most of the modern homes in our area typically have 150, 200 amp service, and it works just fine. And you won't have to go through any of that. But that is one of the things that whenever the installer comes out to do your walkthrough, they will check your panel and let you know where you stand with that. And if you do need a new one, then they would give you the price of that as well. So we didn't have to have a panel whenever we got our solar, but now that we've added a new electric vehicle to our home, we are having to go through a panel upgrade. So they're about $1,500 is what I'm learning. So yet another little part and piece to all of that. So then let's look at what makes a roof a really good roof for solar. So first up is roof orientation. So here in Ohio, we're in the Northern Hemisphere. We want our roofs primarily facing south is the very best. So if you have a southern exposure, that'll get you the prime amount of solar capacity off of your panels. East and west will also work pretty well. If you only have a north facing surface available to you, be prepared, the solar installer or my team, one of the 2 of us will be telling you, we're sorry, you're just not a great fit for solar. Little to no shading. Our tree canopy is super important. We are not going to tell you to remove trees. We are actually going to ask that you not remove trees. So if you have a giant tree canopy over your house, if you want to prioritize solar, you're absolutely allowed to, but that's not something that we're going to encourage you to do, because that shading is really important to our community, as well as the oxygen that those trees help to provide. So we want homes without shading. In my case, we only have 1 big tree in the front yard, and there's a picture of my house back there on the table. You can barely see the edge of it, so it doesn't have any shading on my house, but my neighbor's house has shading on my house for part of the day. So that's where you have to have enough space to have those panels that doesn't have that shading. So like where I have a ranch style house and I'm a 1-story, every building around me is taller than us. So it automatically tosses a little bit of shading onto our roof. Typically for a smaller installation, we're only looking for 200 to 250 square feet. So most rooftops have that kind of spacing available. And then the last factor that I don't have a good picture for up here is the age of your roof. So if you have a 25-year-old roof that's getting ready to need replaced, you're going to have to go through that roof replacement first. And that's just because your installer does not want to inherit the problems that come with an old roof. They don't want to be responsible for leaks that they could create from being on that old roof, and they don't want to have to deal with you having to have your panels removed right away, because you do have to have a roof replacement. So, if you've got a 20-year-old roof and you're getting ready for a roof replacement and you get it replaced, then's a great time to go solar, because your roof has got the maximum amount of life yet left in it. And just in case anybody's curious, you can absolutely get your roof's warranty still covered, even after a solar installation. So we worked with our roofing company. We had our roof replaced in August of 2019. And then we went solar in 2020 on our home. And so we talked to the roofing company ahead of time and let them know that we were going to be going solar, that was not, an optional thing for us, that we were going to find a way, come, high water or whatever, because we had a bit of a battle with our HOA, but we were like, we're going to go solar. What do we need to do to make this, okay with you guys? And so they gave us a whole list of rules and had a guy come back out and re-inspect our roof after the solar is installed, to show that all the penetrations were sealed, to show that there was critter guard put around it so that, nobody is getting underneath of it and tearing up the roofing materials or the panels. And then they gave us a certificate that says that we still have the lifetime warranty on our roofing materials, as well as, with the one that we had from the solar installer. So just some of the different factors that you're going to want to look at. And then some important terminology. So the few fancy words I will toss about are kilowatts, which is how your system is measured, kilowatt hours, which is how much production they make over like the course of a day. And the easiest way I found to think of those is kilowatts is like your garden hose, and your kilowatt hours is the size of pool you're filling up in the backyard. So if you've got, a 3 kilowatt system, that's a little garden hose. If you've got a 13 kilowatt system, that's a giant fire hose. And you better not be filling the kiddies pool. You better be filling, the Olympic size pool. So that always helps me to break those down a little bit. The average system size here in Ohio is a 6 to 7 kilowatt system. That usually will be enough to power, your average 1,500 or so square foot home, and work really well. If you have higher energy needs, let's say that you've already invested in those electric vehicles, or you are, Bitcoin mining in the basement and you're trying to help cover that electricity usage, then you're probably going to need a little bit bigger system than that. So this is a little scaled system here you can see. So that's a 4.2 kilowatt system. Each of those panels produces about 350 watts. So it takes 3 of those to make each of those kilowatts. And then you can see we've got like an average 6 foot tall gentleman standing there next to it, just so you can kind of see what the scale of it looks like. So let's look at a little tiny version of a system up here. So everything starts with the sun, and the energy from the sunlight is being collected on those panels on the rooftop in this case. The energy then moves to the inverter, where it is changed from DC, because that's just what the power is coming off of your panels, to AC. The inverter feeds into the electric panel, which then lets it be used by all the loads in your home, and into the utility meter in some cases. And whenever we're working into that utility meter, that is referred to as net metering. So net metering is just a fancy way of saying whenever you're making too much power for your own household, like let's say my system during the day today, before we plugged in a truck, before I came over here tonight, it was producing about 12 kilowatts at the high point of noon. And so that was way more than my house was using, because the AC wasn't on today. I wasn't doing any chores around the house, and none of my appliances were running. So my house was only drawing about 1.2 kilowatts. So the other, 10 and a half were being pushed out to the grid, and I was receiving credits for those. So on a future bill or overnight tonight, whenever I'm using power and I don't have it left from my battery or from my solar, then it comes back to me, and I'm not paying for that as long as I have credits left. So the net metering is just their way of saying that you've got your bidirectional utility measure. And other than Columbus Public Power, everybody here in our region does have that available. If you're a CPP customer, talk to me later. I'll get you the right people to talk to, just because they do not have net metering yet on their system, but we're trying to talk them into it by showing them there is an ask and a demand for it. But if you're with AEP or any of the little local rural cooperatives, I know there are a few of those. South Central Power, I think, touches up to this side of town. So they have net metering available at this point. So what would a power bill look like? So we've got the simplest power bill ever up here. So let's say that you used over the course of a month 300 kilowatt hours from the grid. And at that same time during the day, you were making extra energy, so you gave them back 200 kilowatt hours. You're only going to have to pay for that leftover 100 kilowatt hours. Now, there are some other fees on there. If you've ever looked at your power bill more than once, you're going to know that there's, generation, distribution, transmission, a fee for getting fees and some taxes and everything else that you can imagine. They've found a way to tack onto our power bills. And those are not covered unless you're producing a whole lot of extra energy, but it is completely possible. AEP, that's who most of our people will have as their provider, does allow for up to 120% of your power bill to be offset. So usually during the summer, some people will see that with their systems if they have a large system. And then during the fall and winter, it'll catch back up to you and you'll end up paying a little bit. So we typically at our house don't see power bills from sometime in March until October or November. And sometimes they owe us a credit, like July, they owed me a whole 49 cents, but that rolled forward then to August. So can't beat that. You're getting paid to have, your own electricity produced at home. So as you might have heard me talk about though, that net metering only works whenever it can push that power back out to the grid. So let's say that we're in a power outage, which you probably all, this map is a little faded out too, but if you want to view it back online, look up any of those articles from June, whenever we had all of those power outages in our area. And those red areas were the ones that were impacted in some cases for 3 to 5 days. They were out of power. Those yellow areas were the ones that were impacted for a little less time, but it was a little rough for some of our, areas. They had, the restoration times were listed and they were days away. And those people were without electricity. And so whenever your power is out, your solar does shut down unless you have one of two things. So there's IQ8 by Enphase, which are being offered by this installer. Those are a inverter that is able to shut down and island your house. So during the day, whenever the sun is out, you would still be able to use that energy because it would keep you from pushing power back out to the grid. So you're not going to be gaining credits, but you would still have access to your electricity that you are producing during the day. If those are something that you want, then absolutely make sure you're telling the installer, hey, we want to have access to our power all the time. And the other part is that you can do is battery backup. So if you have frequent outages, or if you have really sensitive medical equipment at home, if you just are wanting to prepare for national disasters or any type of emergency situation, then you might want to look at battery backup so that whenever the sun isn't out, you still have that power available. And those do come with an additional fee. They do have a credit now on those as well. So you're still getting back that 30%, but it's something to consider if that's what you're wanting to have access to your power with. And we do have a battery storage guide on our website. So that's solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. And if you don't happen to remember that and you're wanting to look it up later, if you just on our little search bar type in battery or storage or backup or any number of words that somewhat jog into your memory, it's going to find it. We try to make everything really simple and easy to locate. And then an additional optional item in this co-op that you can add is an EV charger. So automatically, if you do decide to go with the co-op and you're getting the solar and you're getting a larger system, an 8 kilowatt or larger system, the outlet, like you see pictured at the bottom, is free. So do take them up for that. Even if you don't have an electric car now, maybe you're going to decide to add a kiln or an RV or, a welder to your garage. All of those run off of that same outlet. So even if you're not an EV person, there's no reason to opt out of getting a free outlet in your garage. And it's just a standard 240 volt, and then it's a 1450 usually. I think you can ask for a 650 if that happens to be something that you would need. And if you're not an electrical person, you can just show the installer your plug of whatever you're wanting to plug in, and they will make sure you get the right one. And there are adapters. If you get the wrong one and you need to change it later, we can get you hooked up with one of those. So the other thing that you could do is get a hardwired unit. They do have a little bit higher price with them, but it's all about whatever you're wanting to do. And we did have some people that brought in their own Tesla wall chargers that they had received with their vehicles, and the installer is capable of putting those in as well. So, and if you're under that 8 kilowatt system and you're not eligible for a free one, it is $350 to get the outlet installed, which is by far about the best price I've heard for one of those. And I, volunteer with a lot of electric vehicle things. That's a really fair rate. It usually costs you about that to get the electrician out to your house, let alone the wire run. And it includes up to 30 feet of that copper wire run from your basement or wherever your electric panel is to the garage or wherever you're wanting to charge your car. I'm hoping garage. I don't know where else you would be putting it. Maybe a carport, somewhere reasonable. First person that says they installed one in their living room, I'm just going to have questions for. So, all right, before we dive into solar economics, does anybody have any technical kind of questions?
Okay, I have two questions. The first
Okay.
one is, when you are banking your extra solar power and the utility company is like holding it for you, are you able to see how much you're accumulating per day or per month? Or
So we were able to for a little while, thanks to House Bill 6, which we all know and love oh so much. Insert sarcastic voice here. The energy efficiency portions of the electric bill had to go bye-bye because of the smart meters that they installed on all of our homes, and they can't disclose all of that now to us. They are working on a little bill to help reverse that energy efficiency part. So if that goes through, it'll be back visible to us all day, every day on your AEP app or whoever your power provider app is. Otherwise, there are consumption monitors that you can have added to your system that will show you different things like that. I'll pull mine up on my phone for my system where it shows what I'm producing and stuff. And we'll just pass my phone around. That shows my house over the course of today, what it produced, and you can scroll it up and down, and there's all kinds of other graphs and information on there. Most of the systems will come automatically with something like that, where it shows you how much you've produced over the course of the day and what your current draw in your house is, how much is left in your battery. We typically leave ours set to 50% just as a reserve in case we have an outage overnight. But otherwise, we run our battery daily to just do self-consumption because there's no reason to only get a partial credit whenever I can be using my own power. So, but those are great questions. Do you have one more?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
And the second one is, so on my bill, I'm looking at like 300 kilowatt hours, 400, like for the month. Like, how do I reduce that down into like the size of the system that I need, like 4 kilowatts, 5 kilowatts?
So they will, whenever the installer comes out, they will help you break that all down. And we do installation reviews just so that you know that the installer is telling you what they should be. We make sure that they are telling you what they should be. So we'll follow back up and we just spot check random contracts to see that they did offer the right size system to people, that they did, offer the pricing that was agreed to through the terms of the co-op and everything. And then we come back out and we randomly inspect some houses, and we'll, come out and get pictures. I've got a drone, run it up there and check everybody's roofs, get you some photos of it if you want. That's like we have back there at the back, you can see my house that way. But they'll help you to try to scale it to offset. We purposely scaled our system to offset. We had 2 electric vehicles and then house at the time, and we wanted to do 100% offset if possible. We have months that we do that. We have months that we don't quite make that. If we're driving, this month is going to be really bad. I'm doing about 3,000 miles of travel this month, and that's all electric cars. So they are charging at home, near nightly. And if I'm home during the day, I charge them up on my solar, but otherwise, my grid demand is pretty bad this month. So I fully expect to have a power bill, but you can let them know what your goal is. Some people only want to be able to offset a certain portion of their bill. Some people want their loan payment to end up at a certain point, and they can help you scale your system to meet whatever those little rules and, asks are of you.
So when you're looking at square footage on your roof, does the garage add or you can't put them on the
Nope, you
garage?
can absolutely put them on a garage, even a detached garage. Yeah, at the back of the room, you'll find on the table, there's a picture of a house. There are 18 panels on the south facing roof of the main part of our house. And then there's 12 east and 12 west, and those are on our garage. And all of those are street facing, which took us 18 months of conversation with our HOA to get permission to put in. And then, you know, I hope to pass a bill so that the rest of everybody doesn't have to have that same 18 months of conversations with their HOAs. So you can look at that and you can see how, you know, they can put them in a variety of ways. The back of our house, which is where our HOA wanted them to begin with, is 100% north. So I have a true south facing house, which is great for solar if allowed there. So, you know, we're really lucky that some of our suburbs have wanted to have sustainability departments like here in Bexley or even in Columbus, where they have worked really hard to be more green and have friendly solar rules and encourage their HOAs within those areas to have those rules as well. So we've seen a little less of it here in Columbus, you know, not so much on the west side where I'm from. So
We have one question online.
All
Someone
right.
asks if there are any options for panels to be installed on other surfaces like a fence or something off of the house if the roof is shaded.
So I do know that this installer has worked with carports and pergolas before. So there's those kind of surfaces. I'm not sure about a fence installation. That would probably depend on the materials of the fence. A lot of fences don't have, you know, 20 plus years of life, and they're kind of, you know, vertical. That might not be the best angle for them, but I mean, it's something that they could explore. And if they've got the kind of space that they're looking at that, they might even be able to opt into ground mounts. But there would be some different ways that, you know, they could probably help them with that if they didn't want to do a roof mount.
Do you know, or maybe do you know, is street facing solar permissible in Bexley?
We'll let our sustainability expert here talk about it.
Street facing solar can be permissible in Bexley. We are currently working on revising the solar ordinance. So hopefully in the near future, things will be more permissible. It's not to say that right now you can't, but it would take some conversations with our building department and our designer. It's possible. And in the future, it should be easier.
And then one of the things that we see, because Elizabeth was talking to me beforehand, is that some of our suburbs are starting to have climate action plans. They're following the suit of Columbus itself, which has one in place. And as a part of those, some of the cities are working with a group called Soul Smart, which gives them a silver, gold, bronze designation. And they can receive, you know, they have to have certain permit things in place for how fast to work with it and the different rules and stuff. So maybe that's something, you know, that down the road she'll be working on with it.
I just received word last week that we have met all the criteria for a bronze designation. However, we're going to wait to formally announce that until we meet the requirements for a gold designation.
All right, let's dive into some solar economics. And if you think of anything else, we can circle back to it. So solar is a good investment. It's no longer the boutique item that it once was, where it used to cost, you know, upwards of $10 a watt. We now see the national average is down to $3 a watt. In our co-op, the average price is $2.60 a watt. So there is a substantial discount, especially in this co-op, for that pricing. And then I need to update this slide because our federal tax credit just changed along with the Inflation Reduction Act back up to 30%. So I will catch that slide back up. I forgot that it was on that one. I do have it on some of my other ones though, so we'll go over that in a second. But how do co-ops result in savings? Because like I mentioned before, we're taking a bulk group of people in. So they're able to order, you know, all at once for materials, for the wiring, for the squirrel guard, which is its literal name. It's like a little fence they put around the bottom of your panels because squirrels are a nuisance with panels. They like the wire. They like the, you know, the little habitat it gives them, this little cozy home, and they will go in there and live and just wreak havoc. So we put up little fences to keep them out. Birds are also known to get in there, but not as often as those squirrels in our area. But they help to keep the cost down because they're able to order in bulk. They also aren't having to advertise because we're taking them this whole work group at once. So those soft costs are eliminated because they're able to hire their crews and keep them on at a more steady pace. Their labor costs typically go down a little bit. So all of those add up to things that they can discount off. And that's why we don't even approach our installers until we have at least 30 people. And we usually wait to 50 people so that they know that we're going to be bringing them a larger group of participants that are interested in doing it. And so this is my page that I did remember to update. So as you can see, our federal tax credit just changed with the Inflation Reduction Act, which the last time I had one of these info sessions, it changed that morning. So that was fun for me. But we've got better graphics now than what I put together that day, which is just basically an X saying this is not valid anymore. But we've got 30%, and that is good through 2032. So if you decide after hearing this tonight or after you get your inspection or anything that this is not the right time for you, you've got like 10 years to decide that it is the right time for you and still have that same tax credit available. And then in 2033 and 2034, we'll see it step down like it was before. And that was retroactive. So if you're coming for information, but you've already got your installation done, watch your taxes because it'll be 30% instead of 26. And it went back to January of this year. So it's really nice to see that retroactively in effect. That was some fun calls to make for all the installs that happened earlier this year around our state. We were like, guess what? You're getting an extra 4%. So this is some example pricing, and this is based off of the average size of roof installation here in our co-op area. So we looked at the 4 kilowatt hour pricing, and that would come in at 10,000-ish for your installation. Those are turnkey systems, so they're not going to give it to you as just one line item, but it should add up to that overall unless you're adding on any of those other additional pieces. An 8 kilowatt system comes in at about 20,000, and a 12 kilowatt system comes in at about 31. And we'll just read down through the 8 just because it's the middle of the page here. So if you've got that federal tax credit coming back of 30%, that is $6,240 back. And just in case you don't have that much tax liability, you can take that over the course of 5 years. So if you only had, $1,200 in tax liability, the first year you'd get back that $1,200, the second year that $1,200, and then you're going to throw away $240 to the government. Just consider them that your fee if you only had $1,200 in tax liability. But I think most of us probably get hit a fair amount harder than that. I know in our case, we were able to absorb our full hit all at once. I think that, a fair amount of people usually are, because taxes add up a lot faster than we think they do. But if you happen to be on a fixed income or anything and you have a lower tax liability, then, let us know and we can help to look for some other options for you or talk to you about how to work on that 5-year kind of rolling plan with them. Your net cost then would end up being on that 8 kilowatt system, $4,560. We'd estimate that you'd be saving a little over $1,000 a year on your electricity bill. Obviously, that varies on how often you're using the highest demand loads and stuff during the day and whenever your power is available. Your 10-year cumulative savings would be $13,000, and the estimated lifetime savings on it at 25 years would be $36,000. So if you did keep those panels in place for that full 25 years that they're going to be warrantied out for, you're looking at about $21,000 that's considered net profit because you've offset that much in electricity bills over the course of the lifetime of the system. Obviously, pricing can vary a little bit with different factors. Okay, so financing and loan options. So a lot of folks will decide to go with that home equity line of credit. You can usually get a pretty good rate. I mean, those vary day to day, depending on whatever people want to do. You might want to refinance and include your solar that way. If you're rural, that's what that R in that REAP program qualifies for, then you might be able to get, a grant program available. There's some of our installers have financing available. The installer that the co-op is using does have financing through the Clean Energy Credit Union, which happens to be our next line. They specialize in loans for solar, wind, electric vehicles, geothermal, heat pumps, anything like that. They won't even touch a loan for anything outside of those clean energy items. And then EcoLink subsidies. So here in Ohio, we have an EcoLink program. And whenever you go through the financing, that's something that the installer can help you apply to the state for. And they will give you then a 3% discount for the first, I think it's 5 years of the course of the loan. So it's a really good program to help you reduce that interest rate on your loan for the first so many years of it. So that's something you can ask about or look into and see if you qualify for. But there's a few different financing options, and I happen to know that Columbus is working on a green bank. So that might be something, probably not this year. I'd say that by the time they get the funding and everything in place for it, we're probably looking at mid 23. But you know, that's another option that you might have out there. So always good to know what our options are now and what they might be in the future. And we're going.
Question about you keep mentioning the installer. Did you have one picked out already, or?
We do in this co-op. So we had we've got that on it. So we've got a slide on that in just a minute, what the selection committee is like and everything. So this co-op launched in mid-July. So we're coming up on the kind of wrapping up portions of it, where by October 15th, we'll have everybody in it that's going to be in it.
And are you committed to this company, like to this installer?
We are for this co-op.
For this co-op, but any more the next starting co-ops could be
They
another.
will, yep, they'll
have to
all
go through the
toss
bidding
their hats
process?
back into the ring and try for it again.
So
I was curious if you're seeing anyone that's converting to solar, are they also changing their furnace from a gas generated furnace to a heat pump to
So
rely on the electricity more?
we do have some people that decide to do that because they're wanting to, green up their household, or because they're wanting to use their own locally sourced, produced on their rooftop electricity to do those. We have a co-op in Colorado that's running a test pilot program where they're doing heat pump installations as well. So, I mean, that might be something that we're going to watch and see how theirs goes. Nobody likes to be the guinea pig. If I can let Colorado do it, we absolutely will. But that might be something that we evaluate, down the road here in the future here as well, just because there's a lot of efficiency upgrades that can be made to homes. So, and there's some really good rebates that are a part of that IRA for all the other parts and pieces. So if there's something like a heat pump or, insulation materials that you're looking to change out, then, I would definitely consult your tax advisor. They can give you the best heads up on what is and isn't included in that. All right. So why might you want to join our solar co-op? So we have a really good value on that installation. As I mentioned, the average price in ours, now it is scaled. So it starts out at like $270, I think, or $280 for the little tiny systems. And it goes down to like $245 for the larger systems. But on average, we're going to see people pay about $2.60 a watt. And the national average is $3. So it'll save you that little bit off the top of it right there. You get support throughout the process because we have these classes like this. We have a help desk online that you can sign into and schedule yourself some time with one of our Go Solar pros who all have more training than I do and will help you get some of those technical questions answered. They'll look over multiple bids. So if you have a bid from somebody else and you want to get it compared to the co-op, or you just have 3 bids from outside of the co-op, they'll help you look over those and see which one of those really is the right fit for your house. Because we had 5 installers out to do inspections and check with us before we went through the co-op. And all 5 of them told us different sizes, different materials, different, layouts of the panels and everything else. So, whenever we went through the co-op process then, and we had this 6th opinion, weigh in, and it looked really close to a couple of the other ones. We were like, okay, that's tracking with what some of these say. And these other outliers are definitely not folks that we want to pay attention to anymore. But it lets you, have that comparison process and somebody else to help look it over with you. It lets you connect with fellow solar enthusiasts. I mean, everybody in this room came in tonight because they wanted to learn something about solar. And now you've seen all their faces. You can track them all down whenever you're getting a coffee and be like, I saw you at the solar thing. What did you learn that maybe I missed? and you get to become a growing part of the growing solar movement. Because we just keep having more of these installations around our community. And now you'll know a little bit about it. So you can impress your neighbor that has the solar panels and be like, hey, how many kilowatts is your system? How much of your power bill are you offsetting? And they're gonna be like, what? She knows words. So here's what our average co-op process looks like. So we ran this one in a little bit of an accelerated timeline because the city of Columbus asked us to have it start and end 3 months later. So the first month we had our launch, which is at Linden. You've seen the picture from that at the start of the evening. We have the sign up online and we're having people spread the word. And then we selected our installer. So like beginning of August, we had a meeting. 28 people who had registered already at that point for the co-op said, yes, I'll lend you guys 2 hours of my evening one day, and I will come onto Zoom and I will listen to everybody's RFP. We have 28 questions we ask them. Some of the installers sent in, 30 pages of information. Some of them sent in 72 pages of information. It's a lot to digest, but those 28 people sat there, they listened to the overview of it. They had the full file available if they wanted to read through it. I'm sure some of our tech guys probably did. Some of us probably just skimmed it to find the numbers that they needed. But then they look at that and they voted for a company. So they eliminated one company because one guy remembered those slate roof homes. And that one company out of the 4 that we had bid on this co-op said, we don't work on slate homes. And so they were like, hey, but we have a guy that's got slate and he wants to get a slate roof, installation, and that company isn't going to work on that. And so they were like, can we eliminate them? I'm like, what's your vote? If you want to eliminate that one, we absolutely can. And they eliminated the highest price bid right away because it was a lot higher than the other, 4. So we were down to 2 companies pretty quick like, and then they sat there and they really dove into them and they looked at warranties and they looked at, hiring practices, because that was important in this co-op to see who would be having available positions and who does have diversity in their workforce. Since we're working with Empowered, we wanted to make sure those kids have positions available whenever they're graduating from that program. And that was the pictures that we seen on that one page of the kids out looking at the installations. That is, that's our installer for the co-op, and he's already had them out there for a day to get on job sites and see, what that stuff looks like in real life. So they looked it all over, and then we had a vote. It wasn't unanimous. It was a fair amount toward the one, but it ended up being, that we had our installer selected. So that was on August 9th, and that's Ohio Power Solutions. So if you do sign up tonight, right away, you're going to get like a 6-part series from me. I have no idea what's in those messages. So if you do have a question about them, please hit like forward whenever you're responding to it. It comes to me, but those are computer generated. I received my own series of 6 2 years ago, but there is some updated information in there. So I don't know what they list in there right now. I'm not going to lie. That's something automated our system does, and it signs my name to it. Hopefully it's good and you all enjoy it. But then we have our deadline for sign up. So October 15th it will be our last chance day, and we'll send out a couple reminder messages about that. That's just our day that we're going to close it down so that the installer knows about how many systems they might be putting in, so that they can keep equipment orders going in like large groups, so that they're not, having to wind the systems out through January or February and getting back into that more singular pricing, which would cost them after they've offered, a certain bid. So there will be a personalized proposal made for your home if you choose to go through this. So if you answer those 6 messages and you're like, yes, I do want to proceed with this process, the installer will come out and check on your roof and give you a proposal. He'll talk to you about, what kind of things you're wanting in it. Do you want the batteries? Do you want the EV charger? Do you want, the IQ8 by Enphase little inverters that'll let you have your power during the day if your power is out, kind of things. And he'll put that all into one pricing, and he's going to list off line by line what it is. And then he's going to give you that bottom dollar price. And if it's not something that you agree with, or you think he's pulling something, email me. I don't think Bob would. He's a real straightforward, real good straightforward shooter kind of guy. He's from London, Ohio, works the business with his son. They co-own it together. But, in case he's having an off day or he decides he's going to pull something, let me know. I know Bob's address. I will show up there and have a conversation with him. So he did my installation though. He happened to service the co-op in 2020. Now he has the 2022 one. So I don't think he'll be like that. But if you do decide to go through the installation, we have a big party in a couple months. So once we get all the installations finished, we'll gather everybody together that had an installation. We'll talk about our systems. We'll have pizza or beer or whatever it is we decide to have. It's another democratic process, so we'll have people vote on that. But that's pretty much our co-op. So if you didn't sign up, at the back of the room, there's scan codes on stuff you can use to sign up. You can go to solarunitedneighbors.org/Columbus, and I added my R. I had forgotten my R in the .org last time. So I'm dyslexic. You never know what you're getting on my slides. It's kind of a show. So, and then we do not have a poll question tonight. Usually we have a poll question we can ask everybody. If you really want a poll question, I can have Morgan email you one. So you can just write to me and let me know. I'll put my information up here and then we can have any follow-up questions anybody has.
Hi,
Yes.
thanks for being with us this evening.
No problem.
In terms of timeline, so for this particular co-op, if we were to sign up today, we have to be committed to putting in solar panels within 3 to 5 months.
So they'll once they come out and do your inspection and stuff, they will give you a timeline of about what they're estimating. So we already have 2 signed contracts. So they've been sending out proposals to people. They've been going out and checking somewhere between 20 and 40 houses a week. So they're doing those checkups on themselves, but they're going out and giving the proposals to people. And then it all depends on your suburb. Columbus is running really fast. They've got their process down to under 24 hours. They tell installers they can actually wait at the counter and receive their permits back same day in most cases. And then some of our other suburbs run a little bit slower. New Albany, looking at you. So, it just depends on where you live, on how long those permits take. But we're usually seeing about 4 weeks from them placing the order to the panels arriving.
So if you're looking to extend the timeline, would you recommend to opt into a future co-op?
I would say you probably want to wait. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because we'll probably have most of these installations done by the end of the year. It's not quite as urgent as it was before, since that tax credit, woohoo, is now good for 10 years. The tax credit that we did have was 26%, and it was going to expire December 31st. So we were working under, quite the tight timeline that we were going to try to jam everybody in before they lost that tax benefit. But now we have a little bit more flexibility, but we'll still try to, because we have another co-op coming up in 23. So if this one isn't right for you, or you don't like the installer, or, you're really hoping for somebody else to win it, or a different price or different equipment, check back with us.
Hi, thank you for this really informative. Could you give an example of the support that Sun provides the consumer in the co-op throughout the process? So obviously a lot of education and, a sense of community and information, which is great. And then the process with the installers. But once the install happens, does Sun, if there's issues with the product or with the service responsiveness of the company, does Sun help advocate or step in or intervene or support in some way?
We absolutely would. And even for people who do not go solar through the co-ops, we receive probably 2 or 3 calls nationwide a week from people who went solar with somebody else. They can no longer find that company, or the company isn't giving them any service, no answers at all. And they'll call us because our phone number is out there and our website is out there, and your national community advocacy program, can you help me out? And we will try our best to either, help them get a hold of that company in some cases, help them get answers, or find a different company that is capable of servicing those items. Most of our installers, because they're smaller local companies, tend to be a little bit more, number one, they're closer by. So if you do have a problem, they're able to service it. Like I mentioned, Ohio Power Solutions is out of London. So it's maybe a 30-minute trip for him, 40 minutes in bad traffic or whatever, to get over to your house to help service it if you've got a problem. Whenever we wanted to expand our system, we got a hold of them. And they were, 24 hours, he was answering and saying, hey, congratulations on the new electric vehicle. Here's the price on a panel, and here's what else we would have to upgrade because, it's touching those parts and pieces. So it all depends on who the installer is, on how fast that response is. But for the most part, our Ohio installers, we have a good quality set of folks. So they tend to be pretty quick at answering. And most of them have been in business. Ohio Power Solutions is 14 years independently. And then they had worked with somebody else before that. So they have, a multitude of experiences and stuff. We've got a lot of big local companies, small local, big companies, whatever you want to look at it like, that work like that they've been around 15, 20 years. So they're pretty trustworthy in their business, but we're absolutely still there for you. Even if you're not through the co-op, we, like I said, we answer questions all the time. We look over those bids, not only for our co-op members, but for other people that bring them in. I had the Miami Valley Co-op just closed down. We had 245 people in it. 43 decided to go solar through the co-op, and another 6 had me review their proposals or from outside of the co-op because those just fit their needs better than what we could offer them through the co-op. And we looked over those and helped them decide what we thought would be a better system for them. So there's a lot of different support. It just depends on what you're looking for. We have different programs like, we'll help to promote the stuff like sustainable Bexley is running, green Bexley is running, where, we help to tell them about, we've got it on our newsletter list for the different weeks of this program, or whenever Sustainable Columbus is running something, we'll talk about that with folks. And we have movie nights that we have for things. We have one for Earth Day about electric vehicles. I can't remember the name of the film, but they talked about that. And we had experts on. So it depends on what kind of support you're looking for. We try to offer a little bit of everything. I mean, obviously you can't cover everything, but we do our best.
So apologies if you already mentioned this, but as of now, are you able to tell us the size of this current co-op without assuming any new members?
So as of this morning, we had 232 people signed up. We have 68 people have received their proposals already. And 2 of those people have signed contracts, with another 10 having their contracts that they're working on their financing for. So roundabout numbers there, but we don't close them out at any point unless the installer asks us to. This installer had set a limit whenever we thought the IRA was not going through, whenever BBB got shut down. But now that we have the IRA passed, the Inflation Reduction Act, and that timeline is a little bit more flexible, so he doesn't have to try to do 1 million installations by December 31st. He's like, let's just go, keep it open. We can roll with any number of these. So we've got a very flexible scope of how much work that installer will take on. It just might push your timeline out a little bit more. I had a November install in 2020, just because 2020.
Could you tell us what the prices that you guys negotiated in 2021 and 2020? You said this year was like 260.
Yeah. I don't know 21s. I worked in policy then, so I didn't usually pay attention to pricing. I could look back and find it. I want to say that I have a giant system. My scale is a little bit different. I think our price finished out on our installation at $235, but we only got 26% on our taxes instead of the 30%. So I figured it up the other day, and we actually would about break even with what today's prices are versus what 2 years ago's were, because of the 4% difference on the taxes. Just because I was curious if we should have waited. Not that I can go back in time, but you can run the math. Why don't you? So, but it's not a bad deal. It's just, it is what it is with supply and demand right now. So.
Mryia, thank you so much for coming out and sharing all this wonderful information. Thank you for coming.